Hello, everybody. Good evening. This is EP's last meeting for our 2025-26 year. And this is going to be our last program for our speaker series. And not that we definitely saved the total best for last, but one of the greatest for last. And this will be on Colvin Run Mill Park, or historic site. And it's one of the jewels in the Fairfax County Park Authority crown of jewels, along with Riverbend Park and Turner Farm Park. We have some of the great crowning jewels of the Park Authority. And so for tonight, we'll have it all about Colvin Run Mill. And we have with us James Wallar, who's been the president for the Friends of Colvin Run Mill. And he's been probably every single volunteer meeting I've ever been to. He's extremely active and a go-getter, and he's had quite an interesting career. Seems like most of the time he's been in other countries, France, Switzerland, Germany, Russia, Afghanistan, lots of different places. But we're lucky he ended up here, and he's got a great passion for history. He thinks his family started as millers, I guess, years and years ago. And so he's back to his roots. And I'm really excited that James could be with us tonight. So I'm going to just get quiet here and turn it on over to James Wallar. And thank you very much for coming tonight, James.
Well, thank you very much, Winnie and Lisa, for uh, for having me at this event to talk about my latest passion. Having been in various places around the world, it's always been my practice to kind of dive into the place where I'm at, and I ended up at Colvin Run Mill, as you said, in part because there's a history of millers in my family, or one miller at least, who fought in the Revolutionary War, and also I'm interested in history and connected with Mike Henry, who was the site manager there, and he took me under his wing and shared some of his knowledge of Colvin Run, and that kind of got me more and more interested as I went along. So I'm pleased to be here tonight. As you say, it's considered one of the gems, or a hidden gem, because when we have events, I'm always surprised that people say, "Gee, I drive by this every day, and I didn't realize it was a park. I didn't realize that there was so much here to see and to learn about." So in my overview, I'm going to talk about what the park is, and then who are the Friends of Colvin Run Mill. That's the group that I'm associated with. And what do the Friends do? What do Friends always do but help out? And the last slide would be for anyone that's interested to come and join in the fun. So when I think about what is Colvin Run Mill Park, the best way for me to answer this question is to talk about what it is, what it means to me, why I enjoy volunteering there. And the reason I enjoy volunteering there is a fascinating combination of history, technology, nature, and food. And in my presentation, we'll discuss each one of those. And here you see on the left, the Miller's House. That's, I understand, the oldest brick structure in Great Falls. It was built around 1810, about 1810. The building on the left was a caretaker cottage when Park Authority had money for a full-time caretaker, and of course that no longer exists. But the two rooms on the bottom floor, the first floor of the house, had been redone, and we'll see pictures of those. And of course, on the right side is the mill itself, also built around between 1803 and 1809. We know it was advertised for sale in the Alexandria Gazette, a merchant mill, which means it has three grinding stations, in 1809, and it was then sold in 1811. It's been redone by the Park Authority when they took it over in 1965 and opened it to the public in 1972. And most of the beams, about 80% of the beams are original, but most of the brickwork has been redone, as well as the working gears inside that we'll see. So we'll go through each one of these facets right now, and it seems that we'll start with history because I was at an event this last weekend that talked about Virginia 250th anniversary of our nation. And it's important to note that George Washington owned the land on which the mill now resides. He purchased 250 acres from his friend and neighbor Brian Fairfax in 1763. Brian lived up the road, or had one of his houses up the road in Tolston, on Tolston Road. It's called Tolston Manor. And he also was a neighbor close to Mount Vernon. He had a place called Mount Eagle, which is just a little bit south of Alexandria. Unfortunately, that place was demolished to make way for a metro. But they were great friends, and Washington would ride from Mount Vernon to a difficult run. And here we'll see on the Leesburg Alexandria Pike or road at the time. And that's about 25 miles. It's a good day's ride. And he would stay at a tavern run by John Shepherd that was on Difficult Run. And then he'd get on his horse and ride to Leesburg and then Hillsborough and then out west. He traveled this road. It was called the Great Road to the West. Colvin Run Road is called now. But he traveled it often. He traveled it in 1748 when he was 16 years old and part of a surveying expedition to survey land for Brian Fairfax's uncle, Sir Thomas Fairfax, who lived in a place that's now called White Post, so south of Winchester, southeast of Winchester. And in 1750, Washington, when he's 18 years old, he bought his first plantation, Bullskin Plantation on Bullskin Run, which is south of Charlestown. He had a building there, but the building was demolished, and it's now called Beverly Manor, a house constructed in 1800 by Beverly Whiting. Um, and he traveled this road not only to visit his place on Bullskin Run, but also he traveled it in 1753 when Governor Dinwiddie said, "Go out there, young man, and see if you can chase those French away from the Ohio River Valley." And then he rode on this road again the next year in 1754 when he had Virginia militia to go out and try to do the same thing with a bit more oomph, a bit more force. But of course, that was a disaster where he suffered defeat at Fort Necessity. He went out again in 1755, this time with General Braddock, again for defeat. But this road he was very familiar with, so it's not surprising that he decided to purchase land from Brian Fairfax to rest his horses. And he thought it'd be a great location for a mill because it has a water source, Colvin Run. It has a slope, which is important for an overshot water wheel, which is where the water hits the top of the water wheel. It was next to a road, which was required in those times for a mill to be close to a road. And also it had a good stand of white oaks, and white oaks are very important when used close to water because they are very dense. They don't absorb much water. And Washington was familiar with white oaks because they were used in surveying from the first white oak 15 rods to the next white oak. They were long-lived trees and used as markers in surveying. So he thought one day there would be a mill here. Bill Canis, who you probably all know, former president of your association, was taking a tour of the Library of Congress and was shown this hand-drawn sort of sketch by Washington himself of the land that he purchased, the 250 acres, and this is Difficult Run right here. And then Beth Mitchell, who was a great historian of Fairfax County, uh, matched that land of his right here, Colvin Run, Colville. This is the land that Washington purchased. And you see it runs along Difficult Run here, and it maps against the current roads. And here you have Colvin Run Road right here. The mill is right here. And you notice that of course, this Route 7 didn't exist at the time, and Washington's property covers a lot of what's called now Carper's Farm area. Um, so it's very interesting to see that um, where Washington owned the land. And in fact, the mill, as we'll discuss a little bit later, the property of the park itself expands on the other side. Half of the mill's property, half of the park's property is on this side of of Route 7. Washington never built a mill here, but in 1783 he was impressed with the work being done on the canal to circumvent the Great Falls, and he thought for certain that a mill would be situated well here because you could take the flour and take it up to the Potomac River and float it down to Alexandria for export. The flour from the colonies was in great demand in the Caribbean and in Europe, and he thought he could do well here. In 1799, on November 6th and 7th, he visited the property because he was having a dispute with William Shepherd, the son of John Shepherd, the tavern owner, about the property lines. And he didn't like William Shepherd. He thought he was being cheated by him. And he went back home and then had dinner on December 12th. at Mount Eagle with Brian Fairfax to discuss the matter, and 2 days later, Washington died. So his estate then sold the property to William Shepard, the very guy he was having the argument with. William Shepard advertised this house and the merchant mill, as I mentioned before, for sale in 1809 in the Alexandria Gazette, and he sold it to Philip Carper. Philip Carper was from Pennsylvania. He migrated south and married a miller's daughter in Fredericksburg. Had his own mill up by Point of Rocks, but it was flooded out in 1809, and he purchased it. This is one of the rooms in the miller's house now, with with the furniture and furnishings as it would have existed in 1810. This is one of the projects the Friends helped finance to have the reproduction of the chairs made here. Philip Carper ran the mill until 1841, and then he sold it to John Powell. And John Powell had the unfortunate experience of owning a mill during the Civil War. The land around the mill was decimated. There was no grain being produced, and John Powell, who had other financial issues, went bankrupt. And in 1883, Addison Millard purchased this land, and this is the other room in the Miller's house, which is done in 1890 style, the style which with the Millards would have outfitted this house. They had 20 children, so they made use of every square inch of the house and actually had an extension put on it. Uh, Addison died in 1889. His wife, Emma, ran the mill until 1919, and then his sons ran it until 1934. They shipped flour to North Carolina, Pennsylvania, New York State, and they did the milling using steel rollers rather than the grindstones. It was much more efficient at that time. But the mill has been reconstructed just to have the grindstones. Here you have a picture of the mill from Colvin Run Road. You should be a familiar, at least geographic setting, if the buildings aren't as quite as familiar to you. But this is how it looked in the 1930s. And here's some of the Millard clan, most likely in front of the mill itself. Um, after the Millard sold it in 1934, a guy by the name of Bailey purchased it and thought he would renovate it into some kind of shopping center or restaurant. But World War II intervened, and he never got the resources together. And the state of Virginia decided to build a straighten out Colvin Run Road, or the Great Road to the West, by building Route 7 that goes through two small hills, which cut his property in half, as we saw on the other slide. And he was really upset because his cows were on the south side of Route 7, and they didn't want to come to the barn, which is on the north side of Route 7. So he just let the property go in disrepair, and the county condemned it in 1965, which is when the county Fairfax Park Authority took it over. Right across the street from the mill was an old general store, and that general store was built in 1880 by William Moxley and James Mattier. It was taken over in 1889 by Mark Cockrell, who was Moxley's son-in-law, and Mark operated it until 1944. And actually, the new assistant miller we have, Kirsten Cockrell, is descendant from Mark Cockrell. So we have a real descendant working in the mill from the owner of the general store. The Fairfax County Park Authority put this general store on jacks and took it up the road to make it part of the park itself. And so this is where you see the general store today that's slightly redone. And here kids come and learn about what a general store was back in the day, how it served the frontier communities. People would buy 20 or 50-pound bags of flour, 100-pound bags of sugar and salt, because of course they did their own baking and their own pickling back then. And a guy by the name of Aaron Montgomery Ward in 1872 worked in a general store. And he said to himself, these managers of the general stores, they basically are ripping people off. They can charge whatever they want for a shovel or for a kerosene lamp or whatever. And so he said, maybe people would be interested in buying stuff by mail. So he put together a catalog, and he wasn't doing very well. But in 1893, rural free delivery was enacted, which meant that goods could be delivered right to the farm. That is, the farmer didn't have to come into town to a post office to pick up his goods. He could have it delivered right to his door. And so Montgomery Ward's business took off. And then a couple of other guys who were watch repairmen and watch salesmen, Richard Sears and Alvin Roebuck, got into the act too with their catalog. So this gave general stores competition. And of course, the event of the automobile, making people or allowing people to be more mobile, could go to the towns. So the general stores were going the way of the horse and the buggy. And by 1944, Mark Cockrell gave up the ghost and got rid of this store. But these are the kinds of things we can talk to the kids about. And we can also tell them about 1916 in Memphis, where Piggly Wiggly was the first store to allow people to go up and actually pick out their own merchandise. This was a revolution because when you went to a general store, you asked the storekeep, I need a bag of flour, I need a bag of plug of tobacco or whatever, and he would turn around and get it for you and put it on the counter. Piggly Wiggly stopped that and let people pick up their own merchandise. So this is a bit of history to share with you, and now we'll move on to um, oh, and this is the store itself. The store is partially a store. We sell coffee, tea, and of course our mill products, ground wheat and corn products. But it's also a museum. And so you see some items there that are as it would have appeared when Mark Cockrell was actually running this. So now we'll move on to the next issue, as they say, technology. We have people that are on the Friends. One person is a retired naval engineer, and that's one reason why he likes coming here because he likes the technology of the place. And it has special technology that was developed by Oliver Evans, a we would call him a mechanic, but he was an innovator, a mathematiker, they called him back then, that came up with some innovations to make the mill more efficient. And also, kids these days learn about simple machines. Simple machines, of course, you all remember, they transfer force from one place to another. They change the direction of the force, and of course, they increase the magnitude, distance, or speed of the force. And so the kids, we had about 3,900 kids last year from Fairfax County School that came here and learned about simple machines. And there's a group called STEM in 30. It's a TV program for kids. They came out and made a film of the mill and then they showed the kids how in the Air and Space Museum these same simple machines are put to good use. So it was great fun to have them out and showing the kids simple machines in a 1810 grist mill, and the same principles apply today used in the Air and Space Museum. Um, the kids then see the simple machines in action when they go into the mill itself. And here, this is the gear pit where there's a vertical gear and then a bird cage gear, and just a bird cage waddler gear. It's a lesser face gear, another bird cage gear right up here. And it's fascinating to see the kids' eyes pop open when they see the mill go in motion. Um, just on the technical side here, you can see see how this mill. This is actually a graphic of our mill. This is the water wheel right here, and the water wheel, of course, is propelled by water. This, as I say, is an overshot water wheel. So the water hits the top, a little over the top, and pushes, and the weight of the water pushes and the gravity pulling the wheel down pushes the wheel around. This is the axle, which is 19 feet 10 inches long. It's connected to a greater face wheel, and the greater face wheel is connected to the bird cage gear right here that we saw, and that's connected to another a lesser face wheel right here. And then there's another bird cage gear right here, and that's connected to the stone spindle, which goes up here, and this is the running stone that goes around. So the kinetic energy from the water pushing the water wheel is transferred and changes direction from horizontal to vertical, and then back to vertical to horizontal, and the horizontal to actually grind it. And also, of course, we explained to the kids about gearing up. So each revolution of this big water wheel, for each revolution of that water wheel, the grindstone goes around 10 times because, of course, the gears are smaller. So the kids really find that fascinating. And when we grind and the water wheel is moving with the force of water, it goes around about 12 times in a minute, which means the grindstone is going at 100, 120 revolutions per minute, RPMs. These are the grindstones that we have at the second grinding station, and these are from the Marne River Valley. They're called burner stones. They're the kind of quartz. And you see they weigh a ton. They do weigh a ton each. And this one is the running stone, and that's plopped on top of this bed stone that's stationary. And here is where the stone spindle comes up from the gear pit below, and this is what drives that running stone around. And you notice there are furrows here. These furrows are arrayed in one direction on the running stone and the opposite direction down here. And so when the grain comes into the eye of the running stone, it's actually cut because these act as scissors and they go at a counterclockwise direction and it actually cuts the grain. And that in the day when these stones were used predominantly allowed the brand of the wheat berry to be sifted out because it wouldn't pulverize the brand. It would just let the brand be cut away from the endosperm, the white part, which represents 85% of the wheat berry. So these burr stones were greatly prized back in the day. And you notice they have little holes, and you say, well, why would anyone want to have a holy grindstone? I mean, really. But these little holes represent the remnants of fossils, and these fossil edges are very sharp. And this allows the bran to be picked off of the wheat berry, and so it can be sifted out. Um, so they were highly prized and used until about 1880 when the Millards took over, and that's when steel rollers came into effect. We grind called the low grinding method. Once and done, the grain goes into the eye of the stone, and 2.5 revolutions of the stone later, it spits out flour or cornmeal. Whereas the steel rollers are arrayed in a series of 3 or 6, and then they go through that series again with greater pressure, and they actually squeeze the uh, the 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 brand off of the berry for the endosperm. And to make for us, one and done means what you put in is what you get out. We only may have whole wheat flour, but in the steel roller method, you actually have white flour and you reconstitute. You put back the bran and the germ to reconstitute whole wheat flour. So that's called a high Hungarian method because that method was first developed and used in Budapest. Um, Oliver Evans, as I mentioned, was a mathematiker, or we would call him a mechanic, and he came up with 3 novel innovations to make life a little bit easier. Men would have to take grain and bags and take it up to the top floor where there's a rolling fan, which would basically take impurities out of the grain and a fan that would blow the chaff out, and then it would come down a chute to be ground, and then boys would have to rake the flour on the floor. So Oliver said, well, rather than men taking this flour up on their backs, why don't we have a series of cups? And here you see one cup and the bottom of another cup on a canvas strap, and have these cups powered by the water wheel using a series of cogs and pulleys, and take the grain from the grain storage bin up to the top floor, and so the men wouldn't have to back and sack it, as they would say. So that was one of his novel innovations. Another one was the hopper boy. When flour is first comes out after being ground, it tends to be warm and moist. Warm because of the friction from the centrifugal force of the grindstones grinding grain or pulverizing the grain, and also it's moist because, of course, it's an organic product and has some moisture in it. So, and if you squeeze it, it clumps together. It can't be sifted very easily. So Oliver invented this little contraption called a hopper boy. There are only about 8 of these in the United States, but it's an automatic rake, again, powered by the cogs of the water wheel, and it slowly turns the flour and brings it into the center where there's a hole, and beneath that hole is the bolting box or the sifting box where the flour is then sifted. So this was a second innovation of Oliver Evans. And his third was to use the Archimedes screw, simple machine here, with these baffles. And he used these baffles and the screw, which turns, to push the grain into the rolling screen and the fan on the top when the grain goes up to the top, and then to push the flour into chutes to have the flour be taken up to the top floor using different cups, the flower cups, but the same mechanism of cups on a canvas strap, and then have these Archimedes screws push the flour into the hopper boy where it would be cooled, and then it just drops down into the bolting box and drops down into barrels. And so if you follow that all very closely, you can all sort of make your own diagram, but I have here kind of a sketchy. This is taken from a YouTube video that we have in our Friends of Colvin Run Mill website. You can look at it. It's under Hot Grits and Videos, but it shows the process. But here, if I can show here, this is where the grain storage bin is. Grain has come in, is weighed on a beam scale, dropped down into the storage bin, and then these cups take the grain up here, and here's the rolling fan, sort of cut off, and it comes down. The black line is the grain itself, and it comes down the chute here into be ground right here. And these are the flour cups. The flour cups take the flour back up here. The Archimedes screw pushes it in to the hopper boy, which is right here, and then it drops into the bolting box. And from the bolting box, there's three different sort of uh, uh, chutes of the bolting box for the different grades, super fine, fine, and midland, and that goes down into the barrels right here. We have three different barrels in the below the bolting box on the ground on the first floor. So that's the schematic. So Oliver Evans was a very clever guy. He received the third federal patent for these innovations. And the first group that actually used this commercially was the Ellicott brothers up in Ellicott City, Maryland, Quakers, and they discovered that they used half the manpower that they otherwise would have been using, incorporating these Oliver Evans methods. Oliver Evans' system was also adopted by Thomas Jefferson in Monticello, and George Washington had it installed in Mount Vernon. He was Oliver Evans was a very creative guy, and there is a society named after him. One of his most novel inventions is this little fellow right here. It's called an Orctor amphibius, which for those studying Greek or Latin, we're not quite sure which one it is, but this means an amphibious digging machine. Oliver Evans was given a contract by the Port of Philadelphia to dredge the port. So he thought he'd use the cup mechanism that he had in the mill, but he also designed a high pressure steam engine that would then propel the cups in the dredging. And he put this together in his workshop in Market Street in Philadelphia, but he sort of didn't reckon on how to get this 17-ton contraption down to the Delaware River. So he hooked up the steam engine to the wheels. He didn't have a steering wheel, so he just kind of like luged it down the hill to the Schuylkill River and then into the Delaware River, where he could use it to dredge. This was very, very novel, and someone remarked that this was the most remarkable transport machine since Noah's Ark, since it was the first motorized amphibious craft in the world. And in the Capitol Great Experiment Hall, there is a painting rendering the event of Oliver Evans' Octor amphibious being put into the water itself. There is, I think, said an Oliver Evans Society, and the American Society of Mechanical Engineers has put the mill on its website because of the Oliver Evans technologies. Oliver Evans made his money mostly by developing his steam engine to power riverboats on the Mississippi Ohio rivers. And he had a production plant not only in Philadelphia, but also in Pittsburgh that was run by his son. Now we move on to the third aspect, one reason why I like it here. And I just mentioned right here that when I started at Colvin Run Mill, I had no idea about any of this stuff I'm talking about right now. So this is all sort of what you can learn by being a friend of Colvin Run Mill and taking an interest in it. But the park itself is quite lovely. It has a picnic area and forest and fields and gardens. Volunteers take care of the gardens around the house. The staff uses herbs from the gardens to create teas and ointments with kids. It's kind of one of their programs that they undertake. And we're very interested and welcoming of a tunnel that goes into Route 7. This is part of the great widening of Route 7 that you all experienced and had joy over when it was completed. But this tunnel now will connect the north side of the park, which is where the mill is located, with the south side that you saw that Washington owned, because half of the park is on the south side. And as you emerge uh, from that um, from that tunnel on the south side, you're immediately confronted or welcomed by a wetland, and this has the cattails, and I was there in March, and these little frogs, these 1-inch frogs called peepers, were just croaking to beat the band. You could hardly hear the traffic because the croaking was so loud, and they're so numerous. But it is really a splendid sight to see. Um, the Park Authority is putting together a trail, because there's to actually allow people to conveniently walk. You can walk it now. I've walked it dozens of times, but to conveniently walk from that tunnel to Colvin Run, which is 800 feet away. And when you get to Colvin Run, you can see the remnants of the old mill dam that we have there, and also the remnants of the old mill pond. But this is Colvin Run itself and where the mill dam was at one time. And also you can see the quarry, which is just on the side of the trail next to Colvin Run itself. And this is the quarry that probably where they quarried stones for the foundation of the house and the foundation of the mill. So this also, the trail will connect to the to this trail here that goes to the Rails and River Trail, which is just a mile from Lake Fairfax itself. It's a very pleasant walk along Colvin Run. It's in the shade. You just have to make that little quick crossing at the on Hunter Mill Road. Press the little button so the orange lights flash so that you won't get run over. And then you're in Lake Fairfax itself. And if you turn in the other direction, if you turn east, it's just a quarter mile to the Jerry Connolly Cross County Trail. And when you hit that and turn left again, it's just 3.5 miles to the Potomac River. So we're hoping people take advantage of parking their cars and at the mill itself, and taking day hikes with the family. It's once the trail is in place, and they've ordered a bridge to go over Culver Run, so that it will be family friendly. We hope that the trail will be completed later on this year. It's taken some while to get some funding, but Tim Hackman has done a great job in moving mountains, as well as Supervisor Bierman. Finally, the last of the 4 topics is food. One reason why I like there, and I can say that I think safely, all of the members of the Friend of Colvin Run Mill Board enjoy food. Um, we don't talk about it too much, but we like the mill products that come out of here. And this is one of our board members here, Dan Dyke. He has a particular interest, fondness for for whiskey. So he developed these signs about the corn whiskey economy, the distillation process, and the various parts of an old still. And he has developed a smelling array when you can smell the head and the hearts and the faints that come out from the distillation process, different phases of the distillation process. We do produce grits for those that like grits. Not everyone likes them. And grits, the name comes from the group of Sir Walter Raleigh. When they landed in Roanoke, the Indians greeted them and treated them to a hot bowl of their corn mush. Of course, Indians use corn in all different manners. And the British, the English said, "Well, this is quite good, but it's a bit gritty." Yeah, so the name grits comes from the Brits. But we produce grits and cornmeal, which is, of course, more is finer than the grits itself. And as I say, whole wheat flour. We only do whole wheat flour. Um, since we are do the low grinding method, once and done, what you put in with what you get out, the bran and the wheat germ and the germ are part and parcel of the whole wheat, which means that it can go rancid if it's at room temperature. So the friends purchased a deep freezer so that when the corn is ground and bagged, we put it in a deep freeze, and then we keep it in a refrigerator for sale at the general store. So we recommend keeping it that way at home. This is some cornbread that I baked using the roasted cornmeal that the millers have produced. It was an experiment. I put some real corn in it to give it a cornier taste, but anyway, it's fun to experiment with these products in the kitchen. And also, we had a grits tasting. A woman, a friend of mine, actually, she's from South Carolina. She says, my daddy always bought grits at the Gucci Brothers mill in South Carolina when we go on holiday, and those are the best grits in the world. And I said, well, let's have a tasting. I'll supply the grits, and you do the cooking, cook them the same way, and we'll have a taste off, right? So Geechee Boys is no longer Geechee Boys. It's called Marsh Hen Mill. Um, but I ordered some grits from Marsh Hen Mill and had them side by side with Colvin Run, and she had these nice asparagus pieces. Colvin Runs are on the left side here. They took a lot longer to cook. I don't know whether you recall the movie My Cousin Vinny, but if you're a real Southerner, you don't use quick grits. And the Marsh Hill Mill grits cooked up a little faster than the Colvin Run. Colvin Run took about 20, 25 minutes to get to a toothsome state. Her husband made a nice ragu to put on top. You all know the story about Craig Claiborne, who was the food editor for the New York Times. Grew up on grits and was in a North Carolina restaurant, and they served him shrimp and grits. And because shrimp and grits were poor people's food, because poor people could get shrimp from the ocean, and they get grits from a local farmer, and that was a feast for them. But Craig Claiborne was impressed with a recipe in this North Carolina restaurant, and now shrimp and grits had become he made it very popular and published it in the New York Times newspaper and his cookbooks, and now there are many, many shrimp and grits recipes. So I mentioned there's a natural synergy between, or symbiotic relationship between a mill and still. This is a still that we have that was confiscated by the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms folks from a place around Fair Lakes. We put it together. We aren't permitted to actually distill anything, but we put hot water in it and run it through its paces so people can see the distilling process. And two weeks ago, we had actually a whiskey tasting. Mount Defiance is in Middleburg, and we had ground 1,500 pounds of wheat for them to make mash for their bourbon. Their bourbon is, of course, has to be at least 50% corn mash. Bourbon, of course, originated in Bourbon County, Kentucky, because they use corn for the mash, whereas in the East Coast, people used, Pennsylvania and Marylanders and Virginians used rye, which is the product here from Mount Vernon. Um, but over the years, rather than having bourbon just be made in Bourbon County, Kentucky, named, of course, for the Bourbon family, the French family that helped with Americans, patriots win the Revolution, it can be made anywhere as long as the mash is at least 51% corn and the liquor is stored in a oak barrel for 4 years. Mount Defiance has 70% corn mash, and 25% is our wheat mash, and it's still in barrels right now. So maybe in a year and a half time we can taste ours. But you notice here on the Mount Vernon side, the first bottle is our first run, which is clear, and this is rye whiskey. But when George Washington was making it, he made 11,000 gallons the year before he died. He had 5 stills. It was managed by his manager, James Anderson. It was clear, and this is how liquor whiskey looked at the day. It wasn't until the mid 1800s when the reddish color took over as a sort of preference, and this came about by the liquor being stored in oak barrels to be transported down from Kentucky to New Orleans, and when it got there, it had this reddish color. Well, of course, that's imparted from the oak wood. The oak wood not only imparts colors but also different flavors. The uh, uh, hemicellulose imparts caramel and butter and sugar to it, and then there's lignans that imparts the spice flavors. Excuse me, the spicy flavors. And so the red liquor only took over as predominant in about 1850s, and a guy by the name of Jim Crow became famous in the 1860s for his very popular Old Pepper whiskey. This is our education center where kids come in and learn about simple machines. They also learn about grains around the world. And we have a little kitchen set up because the kids come to camp and we show them, oh, this is how a kitchen used to be. So now let's get to work, and you can wash clothes like they used to wash clothes with an old scrub board. And you can make ice cream like they used to and pickle cucumbers. So, what are the friends? Who are the friends of Colvin Run Mill? Well, we're just a group of individuals that either enjoy technology, or nature, history, or food, and we're pure volunteers. We are a nonprofit organization. We register every year, and we register with the state to make solicitations, and we don't pay taxes because we don't make money. But any gifts given to the friends we use for the mill. Everything goes to the mill and the mill grounds, and it's a tax-deductible gift. We have a memorandum of understanding with the Fairfax County Park Authority, which permits us to use their name and to use their facilities for certain activities, and of course makes us abide by their rules. And we operate at the behest of the site manager. What she wants done, we can help do. So the programs that we have are programs that are actually generated by the site staff themselves, and then we pitch in to help out. Our network of friends group, and I don't know whether someone from Riverbend is on, but there's a friend of Riverbend. There's a friend of Green Springs. If you've ever been to Green Springs, the beautiful gardens they have there, all the plants in Green Springs are donated by friends groups, not by the park authority itself, and they're all maintained by friends group, by pure volunteers, not by the park authority itself. What do we do? Well, this is a picture of Easter egg hunt for 3 years in a row. I try to hide Easter eggs from Lisa's little boy there, so he has a hard time finding them, but they all find the Easter eggs. Um, we give tours of the mills, and here kids are watching the grindstone at work. We have projects, so we fund the Santa at the mill for 2 days. We serve hot chocolate, roast marshmallows. There are activities for the kids at the mill. Um, Apple grinding, apple cider pressing in the fall, where kids bring their own apples. We chop them up and then put them in this scutter right here, and press to make apple cider. Um, we're going to meet tomorrow to talk about a tabletop working model of the gears that you saw, so the kids can come in and actually crank a crank a crank a uh, crank a turn and see how the gears work. We have a model like that now, but it's not very sturdy. There's some old farm equipment we have in the mill that we'd like to put on display, and we've always purchased tools for blacksmiths. We have 2 volunteer blacksmiths now. Some of our other projects are expanding the shed that we have down across from the mill so that the miller can put in his all-terrain vehicle. And we redid the family garden next to the miller's house, and we purchased 2 benches, one to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the renovation of the mill, and one to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Friends group. It's been around that long. Um, this is a picture of the maple syrup boil down, which takes place in February. This is the miller Steve. He taps about 5 or 6 trees. We get some sap. We have a big square evaporating pan. We put the wood fire underneath it and boil and boil and boil that sap down, so it comes up to the essence of sugary syrup. So to participate, you can volunteer. You can donate. We have a website there's a become a friend button, and you can make a contribution there and contact the site manager, who's Kirsten Four. You can contact Winnie, and she can contact me, and I'll put you in touch with them. So thank you for your kind interest, and that's why I enjoy working at Colvin Run Mill. Uh, History, technology, nature, and food. I
Hey,
have more stories. I
James,
have more stories.
do you think maybe you can, you're getting lots of claps, but do you think you can get off of this site so everybody can see each other? Or
Yeah,
are you comfortable with doing that?
yeah.
Great. Well, listen, James is here also to take questions. So I see Karen's hand is already up. So Karen, go ahead.
James, thank you so much for this definitive explanation. And I definitely believe in the friends groups because I am dealing with Turner Farm, but
Okay.
which I know how hard you guys are working at this. I just wanted to mention why friends groups are so incredibly important to our parks. And one of the reasons is when Colvin Run Mill was for sale back in must have been the late 1960s. there was a person on the Fairfax County History Commission who was Bayard Evans, who owned Evans Farm Inn in McLean. And he had collected a lot of historic buildings. And he said to the History Commission, it would be terrible to lose this building. I will pay to move it to Evans Farm Inn. So we are so incredibly lucky today to have this mill sitting where it was built originally. As part of this community, I applaud your efforts and I encourage everybody to make a donation of either time or money. And I wish you the very, very best.
Thank you very much, Karen.
A great commercial.
Yeah, great.
Elizabeth, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay. How do they get the stones together? Because those things you said weigh a ton.
Yes, well, yes. Well, in the last slide, I don't know whether I can I share again? I'll just do the last slide.
I saw it was lifted with the
So,
circular thing.
right here, oops, I'm not quite sure how I got there, but I'm on two different screens, I think. All right, I'll stop share. Anyway, in the last slide, you can see the big stone or the running stone is on something called a blaeless, which is like a hanger, and the blaeless is a big steel rod that comes down around and has two pins that go on the side of the stone, and then that blaeless can be lifted by a wooden crane. So we take the wooden crane and turn it. That lifts the bayless, that gets the stone off the ground, and then it can swivel on the bayless. And so the stone is like this on the ground, and when it comes up, we can swivel it so it goes this way. And then we move it over the bedstone and then put it down on top of it. The only thing you have to watch out for is dropping it on your toes, because that would hurt. But yeah, we grind on the first and third Sundays of the month, and if you come at noon, you see the miller set up. That is, he'll set up the grindstone and then put all of the other contraptions on top. There's the grindstone, and then there's something called a horse, and then the horse holds a hopper, and the hopper is where the grain goes in, and there's something called a chattering damsel that taps and taps and taps the hopper, so the grain comes in just a little bit at a time. Too much grain would seize up the grindstones, even though they weigh a ton.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Hey, Jim, I love the way you structured that presentation because I think people can find what they like and then get drawn into the park. My question for you is, where do you think the park needs the most support? Is it maintenance? Is it in one of those four areas? Or do you have other initiatives that you'd like to start if you had more volunteers or funds? Can you talk about that?
We can always use, well, we have, um, let's see, tours. Right now, there are only two of us that give tours. Other people have sort of dropped out over time. And so I do the first Saturday of the month, and another fellow does the second Saturday, and then it's up to the part-time staff. But I find that being a friend, you get into it a little bit more, and so giving tours is something that they're looking for more people to do. Tending the grounds. This is always, of course, the plants don't sleep, right? And now that we'll have the south side, there will be more to take care of. I don't imagine a lot of manicuring on the south side, but certainly around the house and around the entranceway, that needs attention because even though we have paid to have it cut down, it grows back every year. It just doesn't stop. And so Kirsten has organized some groups, and we also have to do that, but we need more individuals as well as groups. We have a great relationship with the Charity League, and this mother-daughter team shows up and they weed a certain plot, and then once they weed it, then I'll go and plant something in it, put mulch in it so the weeds don't come back. So I do that on a regular basis. But giving tours and helping the gardens, those are the things. And then helping with projects. If you know anything about model gears, you can participate in the meeting tomorrow at 2 o'clock. We have two engineers that will be there, so I plan to learn a lot at that thing. But But as I say, we support the site manager and what she wants to do. The site manager, Kristen Ford, has been there now for almost a year and a half, close to 2 years now, and she's starting to develop more programs. And as you could, well, anyway, I can talk about the different programs, but milling by the Black community, slavery, as well as the camps, movie at the mills, the whiskey tasting, that was very new. So we always need more people to help out with those kind of events. Apple pressing, we do 4 apple presses every Saturday and Sunday in season, and we kind of run out of volunteers. So helping with events, that's always useful as well. And I'm more than happy to relinquish my egg hiding responsibilities. I think all the good places that I know of have been discovered by the kids, so we need some fresh blood to find new hiding places for the
That's good. Anybody else have any other questions?
Yes, I do. I do. Thank you, Winnie. Hey,
Oh,
Jim.
yeah, sure, Chris.
Hey, there he is.
There he is. Yes.
Hey,
Sorry, Chris. Yeah.
Jim.
Are you in the country? Are you in the country?
So great to see you. What a terrific presentation. I just want to second Karen's comments. A really, really great job you guys are doing. I'm so impressed with the photography of your presentation. It's really terrific. And you guys it's just such a wonderful thing to have in our community. And thank you so much for all the great work you're doing. And I will endeavor to my New Year's resolution that this midsummer resolution is to come by more often because I just it's such a gem. And now with the tunnel and the south side and the connection to the trails, it's just it's really wonderful. So thank you for all you're doing, and we'll be there more often.
Okay, well, thank you for your support, Richard. Really appreciate it.
James has been an unbelievable advocate to try to get this trail on the south side completed with
And Rich
using
has
the
actually
tunnel.
walked it. Rich has actually walked where the trail will go.
There's
Oh,
You.
just a minute.
what? Anyway, it's been quite a labor of love for you, James, trying to get that done and working with our officials and getting all of GFCA actively involved in it. And hopefully we'll get to have a ribbon cutting and go on the trail soon. You're thinking maybe at the end of the year, possibly.
The
This
end of the
might
year.
reach fruition.
They have all of they've done several studies and they've had the planning done and mapping out of the trail. So, and the engineering study for the installation of the bridge. So now it's just a question of getting the bridge installed.
It'll just really bring the park together that's been so divided all these years. So it's kind of exciting. Amy, you have a question? You're on mute, by the way. Amy?
Yeah, Jim's wanted to say thank you. That was really well done. I mean, I've heard the tour before, but you just did a great job. One day I'll understand all those gears, and it was really interesting. And I wanted to tell you that I have 3 grown-up boys, young men. 2 of them are getting mechanical engineering PhD and a master's right now, and we were just together 2 or 3 days ago at vacation together, and they were talking about Colvin Run Mill and the 7 simple machines and how that was so relevant and so it just made so much sense to them. And they pursued, I mean, they're in environmental engineering, but they both 2 of the 3 are doing mechanical engineering, and they were just giving you a great compliment, and you didn't know, so I wanted to communicate that
Thank
to
you very much.
They said that was really formative. And
Yeah, well, we see the kids, at least some of the kids, their eyes light up because when they see the gears moving, it's not a black box. There's no magic about it. It's all very straightforward. And but thank you very much for that. That's very, very nice of you to share that.
yeah, now I have the vocabulary to talk, to talk to them about the chattering damsel and all that
That's
stuff.
right.
I'm going to show off. So, thank you very much, and you're having an impact. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
Karen?
I was going to also tell James that when I was busy last year transcribing a bunch of interviews from people that the Historical Society did, people that grew up in Great Falls and lived here uh, 1890s, 1900s. These tapes were done a long time ago. There was a lot of reference to people who, for instance, hopped in the wagon with their dad and rode to that mill to get, usually it was corn ground. That was what they were doing more than anything else. But there were several other clues, and these tapes, I've now taken them all to the Virginia room at Fairfax County Library. But they also, one of them two of them made a reference to not just the mill pond, but there was a larger lake west on Route 7. I do not know exactly where, that they talked about that fed the mill pond and fed the mill, and they skated on it in the wintertime, which is what brought it up into the interview. And I have not decided, I've never figured out exactly where that was, but there's a lot of information about daily use from this community of the mill through the 1930s when it was heavily farmed here. And that could be, if anybody in your group has any spare time, that something that would be, help build the story of what the mill did. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about it is years ago when touring the mill with my children, they had upstairs, they were showing that to do the white flour, it went through a silk sleeve. Is that still there?
Yeah, that's called a bolting box. And there are two hexagonal structures with silk stretched across them. They're at an angle. So when the hopper boy turns and the flour cools it down, it goes in the hole and it goes in the first hexagonal structure, which is tilted, and it goes around. It's rotated. And there's something called a slapper. You know, when you sift something, you hit the side of the sifter, but there's a slapper that shakes the whole box. And so that sifts, the first sift is the superfine flour, that goes down one chute, and then the second hexagon, the flour comes down the second hexagon, and that's fine flour. So yeah, that still exists.
Well, this mill was very rare in that it made white flour. Most of the local mills only ground corn. And so I'm really, this was a big boon to this mill, which made it very popular, and people would travel longer distances to get here. But one of the things that I've always wondered is that, okay, you have two farmers here that are bringing their corn in because they want cornmeal, but then number three has wheat and he wants flour. How do they clean off those stones in between? You don't, in your white flour, you really don't want the leftover of the cornmeal.
Yeah. Well, we only use one grind station, but and I think when the Millards used it, and as I say, they adopted the steel roller method, they only had one grind station as well. And I don't know what they did to change over because it is a bit of a process, but they could do it within an hour easily, and so it wouldn't be that so problem. But the story is that they would do the white flour, as you would say, and a farmer would bring a bag of wheat and say, "I just want my health flour. I want whole wheat. I don't want one of your, your superfine white flour wheat, which has no nutritional value in it at all."
Yeah, well, this is true, but the other thing is that the mill from the mills throughout Fairfax County and Loudoun County too, from the beginning of time, because they were a necessity, became a huge social center. I mean, we had the post office for Great Falls was at one time at that mill, which was called Republican Mills. And it was a huge social center because when you whipped in there to get your cornmeal ground for you, it wasn't going to be a 5-minute operation. You're going to be hanging out for quite a while waiting for it. And so the whole community grew up around the mill because it was so critically important. Which brings me back to my original point was we're very, very lucky that Fairfax County Park Authority finally decided to buy it instead of letting Baird Evans move it to McLean.
Yeah, because the Evans Farm Inn doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. But thank you very much for your program.
Yeah.
Okay, appreciate it. And I enjoyed reading your book.
Thank you.
Oh, another plug for the book too. The Mutual Admiration Society going on here tonight. I love it. So great. We got lots of great people with important positions all around this Great Falls. But listen, all I can say, James, is at this time at Holy Grindstone, you are a really good interpreter. Just have to end with that. And I really appreciate you putting so much good time into that. And we ought to bring it back every year for a program so people know about what's going on over there at Route 7 and
Definitely.
Colvin Mill. You know, we forget all the resources that we have right here that we can really enjoy. And you got me excited about going over there a little more.
You can enjoy visiting, or as Lisa says, you can enjoy contributing.
We